And looking back on that, I can see that really was to where God wanted us. So let me ask you, losing Ben, when story that was the spouse that you now have, a firing that man just left you devastated, a health scare that to really just, and you're in the because of that scare. Times losing is winning. We've been following the life of Jacob the grabber, and he's tricked and stolen from multiple people in his life. And so we're gonna kind of look at this story now where Jacob is getting ready to meet up with his brother. He hasn't seen his brother that he kind of stole from in 20 years. And before he meets his brother, Jacob needs to learn to lose a little bit. He's got to have some loss. And so we're going to look at this story from two angles. It's a very famous story where Jacob, and we're going to see how losing can to winning. Let me share the story with you. Genesis. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man, when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of his hip so that the hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man and said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, probably sounds familiar, all right, if you've been in this series, "I will not let you go until you bless me." The man asked him, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you name?" And then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him, and he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. To this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. So I want to talk to you for a minute about who the wrestling, all right? It's the immediate question that probably a lot of people have of what exactly is the wrestling match? Who is he? Who is he? And there's a couple theories that related to this, as you might guess. The first is that he was wrestling a human being with like supernatural or godlike strength. All right, that's one option, and I tend to reject that idea because it's just not. We just read it. It's not the feel of the story, right? It doesn't appear to be a mere man, and there are ways that this could have been described to have described a mere man. Some say it was an angel. An angel from God came down and wrestled. I kind of have a tendency to reject this theory as well because angels appear throughout the story. Just earlier in chapter 2, angels appear in the story. So it seems likely an angel because angels are mentioned all throughout the Genesis story, and it seems odd that the writer would now be coy about it being an angel, right? I think that the most likely answer is that this was God in human flesh in some capacity. Now, some to conclude that this was incarnate Jesus, that Jesus is like, hey, before I go to Mary and Joseph and live my life there, I want to go down and try to put the hurt onto Jacob, right? The text says, after all, that you've struggled with God and human, and certainly Jesus would fit into both categories. I would exactly go that far. I don't know if it's possible that it was Jesus, but I do believe that this was God in human form because of how the story plays out. Now, it would appear that our boy is a fighter, right? If you believe, you can't say, are you not? Jacob so far, he's tough, and he's holding his own with consider his band, and he was not wrestling fair. There's no possible way. As a young boy during that day, I loved watching wrestling with my dad. Hulk Hogan and all of that sort of stuff. On one occasion, my dad and my grandpa took me to a wrestling match in Detroit live, but often we would watch this professional wrestling on TV, and then afterwards, my dad and I would goof around and we'd wrestle. Let me tell you about my dad. He was a Golden Glove champion, veteran. At the time, he weighed over 300 pounds, and he was tough. I was 8. I was unbelievably skinny. On one occasion, let me tell you how skinny I was. On one occasion, my mom took me to the doctor because they could see my heart beating through my shirt. All right, that's how skinny I was. And she was just, more often than not, when I was Dad, I won. How?